Hey everybody, it's me again. I posted the tutorial on setting up the weave. This is the same weave I was working on for the getting your weave started layout tutorial. Can't remember what I called it. But Doc Ski, of all people, asked me to do a video of how I get the weave started, which I found interesting because I'm pretty sure Doc knows how to do that. But I'm assuming he was wanting me to do it for other people. I know there's a lot of videos out there. Maybe the thought was it might be a little bit different with the Renzetti than with another type of jig, but I don't think so. I think it's the same thing. So I got my camera set up here. We're going to try to, obviously I have a tripod now, so that's good news for everybody. Keep me from breathing into the microphone maybe. Anyway, I'm set up here. This is the, if you want to see how to get all these cross threads put on, you'll have to watch the other tutorial. So we're set up. To avoid messing up the camera shots and everything, I'm not going to spin it around, but I have a standard CRB hand wrapper off to the left of the, right of the camera there. I've got some neon green thread that I'm going to use for my wrap thread. I've got it all set up and ready to go. So that's where this string came from. It's coming from that. Coming from that CRB Custom Rod Builder's hand wrapper. Okay, so I'm going to be spinning my rod this way as I rotate and wrap. So there's the image is going to be on the top side with the threads there. And the bottom is going to be here where there's no threads. So that's where I'm going to want to have my overlap when I start the weave. So I'm just going to, I use a lot of extra thread, so don't be bashful with your thread. And you're going to want to, I always want to pull it, see it's loose right here. I can pull it here, it's loose. I pull it pretty taut before I start this. So what I do is I start with the image on the top side, like so. The reason I do that is because when I wrap the thread around and it pulls tension on all these cross threads, it's going to try to slide them down the rod if you have them on the bottom side. So if you tried to wrap around right where you want your overlap to start the cross wrapping, then whenever you pull your thread taut, it'll pull all of these threads and kind of twist them a little bit. So what I do is I start my thread. See, I've got the blank side with no thread on the bottom, and I'm going to turn it towards me so that the first place the thread touches the blank is on bare rod. So right now I just turn it till it's just touching bare rod. Okay, so whenever I wrap it on around, keeping it really taut, trying not to let it slip, what that does, see, is compresses all the threads together instead of trying to slide them apart. So then I put my finger on top to hold it once I've made a full loop like that. And you just hold pressure with your finger, and then I reach under, I grab the bottom thread that's running back to the wrapper, and I cross it over the thread that I just spun around, okay? And then just holding pressure with my finger, I start my rotation, and you can reposition your finger as you go around. Just keep it nice and snug. Okay, so there's one rotation. And it's going to be really hard to show you this on camera. I'll show you once I have it completed what it looks like up close. So that was one rotation. Just keep pressure with your top finger. There's two rotations. Okay. 3 rotations. I usually do it 5 times to get it pretty well secured. That's 4. And see, now I can take my finger off and it's not spinning loose. So I'll do one more. Okay, there's 5 rotations. Okay, and I started just like you would any slide back a little bit. I started it just like you would any standard guide wrap. You just do a full loop and then overlap your thread that you're wrapping with. So let me change the camera angle. Oh, that's not the right one. I'm going to stop this. I'll be right back. Okay, so there's what the thread looks like up close, up really close on the rod. Now, the string that's going off to the right is my tag end. Okay, and you know it's been wrapped around there several times. So the tag end right now is right at the base of my cross threads. Sorry, I'm trying to get it. I didn't think about getting it unwrapped before I set getting it wrapped from around the rod before I put the camera right on top of my weave. So 1 second. There we go. Okay. So now I've wrapped around 5 times. It's pretty secure. What I'm going to do, and it's going to be difficult to show you this, but you can see that thread just went taut. Here's my little pointer tool coming in, maybe. Boy, this is like using a microscope. There we go. Look at that. That's my thread divider deal. Wow. Okay, so there. See? This thread's pulled taut. Okay, and I've gotten it wrapped 5 times right here. I'm going to pull this thread down to the middle of the bottom of the rod. This thread right here. And that's going to help pack in the outside of the threads, make everything good and secure, and mark where the bottom of the blank is, where I want all of my finishing to be. Okay. So there we go. We're pulled. See, there's the other side of the thread. There's the top side of the thread. So this right here is the middle of the blank. So I'm just going to slowly and firmly pull this thread. There we go. Okay, so that's how I do it. That's how I get the cross weave started. Not really anything else to it than that. Then you just continue rotating. You know, you can see everything's good and secure. I'm going to rotate probably 4 or 5 more times just to make sure it's good and taut, and then I'll start moving left threads. Thanks. Okay, so just real quick, I wanted to do an overview of my setup now that I'm all ready to go. I've got my thread prepped on my weaving jig, and I've got the weave started. Okay, so this is kind of an example of what I keep on hand, and try to keep my space from being too terribly cluttered, which is always difficult, especially working out of a hotel. But okay, so here's my, on my left, never mind the bottle cap, that's not for any purpose. I've got my brace on the left set up, and I've got some space there, so that my threads, whenever you pull your threads through, they're going to be wrapping around the rod right here. You don't want to be too close to this brace, because if you are, your threads can get tangled up in between the rod and the brace, and that's just a real pain. It can slow the process down. And if, like when I did the weave that's here on the rod, don't pay any attention to the marbling, because the marbling's terrible. But when I did this weave, you know, I was really close to the butt of the rod. Now I did that before the butt grip was mounted, and I put a shaft extender into the blank itself, and so my brace was actually back here beyond the rod, and my jig was right here on the butt before there was a butt grip. So that's how I did that one. So anyway, that's the important thing to keep in mind on the left side. Then I like to set my, you know, this thing is designed so that you can put the braces like right in here, and you've got a little, you know, width of this thing for your rod to sit between. I don't like that. I find it to be much easier to set this pretty far back from the rod. You can see that it's back a little distance there. I find that to be the most effective way. That way, when you're wrapping, see where that thread's coming onto the rod at? So here's the top of the rod, right? and then you rotate around. Now, if you have it set up the way it comes designed, this is where your string pulls taut on your cross threads. If you set it back away from, back away from your work area, then your thread's coming on, close to the bottom of the rod. So having your thread come on close to the bottom of the rod, down here is where it's starting to pull tight. What that allows you to do is to move your cross threads without getting too much movement in your wrap thread. If you're too close to where the wrap thread first touches the rod, it's a little loose there, and so when you move your cross threads, you'll have a tendency to move your wrap thread left and move it around a lot, and in fact it can be quite a hassle with it trying to wrap over itself a lot. So anyway, so that's some tips for how to set up your wrapper if you're using the same method I am. Like I said, I'm kind of a cheapskate, so I have a pretty po' boy setup going here. Oh, the reason it's all taped down is sometimes it gets pulled pretty taut. That's about the tension that I keep on it while I'm working. You can see there from the tensioning bar. And I always, that little thing right there, it tries to slide on me a lot, so I tape it and secure it, and then I move it and retape it while I'm working down the rod, just to make sure everything stays set up exactly the way I want it. And the tape just keeps that stuff from moving around back there, and keeps everything nice and in place where I want it while I'm working. Okay, so here's my left list. I've got it all set up. I've got a pencil for scratching things off the left list. When I'm actually working, it's going to be on a table sitting right here. I'm not going to have it where I have to reach under the rod to do anything, because you can get distracted and knock threads loose like that. You pick up your pencil to knock something off, and then next thing you know, boom, you hit the lines, knock them loose. That's no good. The tape back there is actually my camera mount, so that's not a necessary piece of your rod working area. You don't need pineapples or vitamins or any of that stuff either. So anyway, so there's the right side. And whenever I was setting this up in the first tutorial, my brace here was like back in here somewhere. Well, I do that while I'm getting everything set up, and then I take this tape loose and I slide closer. Now, you don't want to be right up next to this, because you want these threads to be freely moving and not hitting your brace. But if you have your brace too far back, then the rod's real bouncy. It'll bounce a lot while you're trying to do your cross weaving. And so I just move it closer to make everything a little more rigid, a little more stable. So there you go. That's how I do my setup. That's pretty much all you need. You need a thread picking tool right there. I usually keep a burnishing tool handy. Don't really need the scissors until I'm done with the weave. And so that's pretty much the 3 essential tools to weaving right there: burnishing tool, a thread picker, and a pencil, and a left list, and then a Renzetti jig is what I use, and then a thread tensioner, and patience, lots of patience.